Hello, everyone, and welcome to our decon session for consistent Fiori UX with UI5 Web Components. My name is Ilhan, and I'm part of the team behind the project. Although virtual from home, I hope you enjoy the session and learn something new. So let's see what we have for today. We are starting with a quick recap to give you background and remind some main concepts. Then we will continue with the main part, overview of the new components, Fiori tree theming. You'll learn how to create a custom theme to develop custom components, what is scoping, and how it ensures the support of micro frontends. And at last, we will talk about the integration of UI5 Web Components into OpenUI5. At the end, we'll close the session with a Q&A, but if you prefer, you can send your questions in the Decon Slack channel. So let's go. We are starting with the definition. UI5 Web Components are enterprise-grade UI elements built on top of native APIs. Well, this is great, but I guess it's always easier with an example. Here we go. Everyone knows HTML, and this is a simple markup, so the output below is not surprising. This is what you get at least in Chrome. And at the right side, you have very similar markup in terms of tag names and lines of code, but made of UI5 Web Components. Instead of a button and UL, you have UI5 button and UI5 list. But you get completely different user experience powered by the Fiori design. And that's the target design system for all SAP products. And you get that without much of an effort. And to become even more clear, let's bring the cheat sheet or everything you need to know about web components. So what are they? They're custom HTML elements usable in any web UI framework, developed as an open source and maintained by the UI5 team. Why would you use them? First of all, because they are future-proof. They will work with any UI framework that might appear, because they're enterprise, implementing sub-Fiori UX, coming with built-in accessibility and other product standards. And because they also have smaller footprint, as they are not an application programming model. How to use them? It's quite easy. The components are published in NPM and can be simply installed from there. Now, let's see how it started and where we're heading to. We already had the OpenUI framework for quite a long time, but in the past years, an evolution took place. A lot of web standards made into the web browser, and we decided to base our stuff on standards. As a result, the Web Components project emerged in the beginning of 2019 as beta. 2 years later, as of today, we are in a release candidate phase, preparing for an official release. And we plan to do it in June this summer. And we are really excited to make this step to reach this milestone. Now, let's put the components in action. New components. In the past year, we introduced 30 new components. Now we have about 60, basically doubled them in a year. We extended our main library significantly with components such as the tree, the datetime picker, and many more. Then we introduced a completely new library for Fiori-specific components, such as the wizard, the shell bar, and the flexible column layout. Let's see a few of them to get better impression. I'll jump to our playground where all the web components can be seen. And the avatar group is one of the newly implemented components, displaying a list of images and providing this nice overflow behavior. Another complex component is the datetime picker, which is composed by a calendar and time controls with this nice sliding effect. And isn't it great to have such complex behavior hidden by a single tag? But wait, we also have layouts, like the flexible column layout that allows developers to separate their views into master detail parts or even detail parts, and having this nice transition between the columns. Or the wizard component, which guides the user through a sequence of tasks. If you are interested in the components, the playground is the place to start from. Let's go back to slides. Okay, Fiori tree theming. One of the most valuable features. The web components are encapsulated by nature, And that means that styles of your app doesn't mix with the styles of the web components, which is great, but also makes the customizing a bit harder. That's why our theming is entirely based on CSS variables. And the cool thing about them is that they can pass through the encapsulation and apply to the nodes within the components. And we are using not just random ones, but the Fiori tree CSS variables, which makes us Fiori tree compliant by design. Now we are providing several built-in themes that you can choose from. But before showing them, let's see how to set a theme. Basically, we provide two options. The first one is with the script configurations that you can place inside your HTML page, and JavaScript API called setTheme that lets you change the theme dynamically at runtime. So let's see a demo for that. This is a Fiori tree reference app built with React, but more important, all the elements that you can see in the screens are UI5 Web Components. It's a typical central home with a shell bar on top and a bunch of cards in the content showing the most valuable info and providing quick links to more detailed views. Here we have a list, the themes as a list of options. The default theme is called Quartz Light and it's currently set and can be seen. We have also Quartz Dark, which is the dark flavor. We have high contrast black and high contrast white, meant mainly for visually impaired users. And what I'm doing when I'm switching between the themes is actually calling the setTheme API. And as you can see, the theme is instantly changing because for us, changing a theme means just providing new values to a set of CSS variables instead of having a separate CSS for each theme.
Преди 5 минути почнала да ти говоря, аз на това.
Okay, so this is how the built-in themes let you have consistent UX. And although they are great, we know that customers always want something a little bit different. That's why we are providing and supporting custom theming. And to make it easier as possible, we have integration with a theme designer. So let me show you how it works. Okay. So the theme designer is basically a user-friendly tool that allows you to change some colors and see the result. Change some colors at the right and see the result at the left. And when you are happy with the result, you can just export your theme and give it a name. I already did that beforehand, so I'll show you the output of this. It's here. So this is the source code of our reference app, and the theme designer produced the CSS file, a simple one, with all the CSS, Fiori tree CSS variables, with our customization applied inside. And everything you need to do is just loading this CSS file, or in React, we can just import it. React will create a style tag for us, and then use the script configuration to set the custom theme. I called it Redfish when I created the theme. So let's jump to the Fiori tree reference app. And yes, as you can see, the custom theme applied. It's mostly red because this is the color that I used. So basically, these are the steps. Use the theme designer to export your CSS variables and the custom colors, load them, and set your theme. It's easy. It just takes a few minutes. Let's continue with the slides. Okay, custom components with the tools. So it's similar to the custom theming. Sometimes you might need a component that's not yet available. And to enable others to start developing components right away, we introduced the tools package. And after installing few dependencies, you need to execute single command and you'll get the same project structure and setup that we use for development. So let's see how it works. Okay, I created an empty folder and already installed the dependencies. So all I need to do is to run the command init UI5 package. It's quite fast because it's produced a bunch of files. Let's start the development server, yarn start, and look at the code. All right. So the script produced this project. It has some nice commands to start, build, and test your project. You have source and test directories prepared, and even it created our first custom UI5 web component. It extends the UI5 element, which is the base class for all our UI5 web components. And it has a template. This is the HTML that will be rendered. It's a plain div with a simple message, and it has some simple styles here. So let's see it in the browser. Find it. Okay, here we go. This is our first custom UI5 web component. As you can see, the tag name is my first component, and this is the div coming from the template. So let's change something. For example, let's use red and maybe update the template to something more. Okay, and let's see the results. Okay, and here we can, and this way you can continue making your component. And to show you how far you can go, I use the same setup and created my own component. And I use it in the Fiori reference app. If we inspect this portion of the screen, you can notice that this element is called my object header. It's not UI5 prefix like the standard ones, like this tab container. So it's completely custom one. And it aggregates another web components to place them nicely as an avatar, statuses, some tags, and so on. And it has this nice mobile-inspired feature to show the description in a separate page for smaller screens and to place it in the middle for wider ones. So if you need a component, just build one. It's easy. Okay. Scoping to support micro frontends. All right, scoping. The idea of micro frontends is to slice a web component to several independent apps. And those apps can load different versions of UI5 web components. And the thing is that a custom element tag, like UI5 button, for example, can be defined just once. And this creates a challenge as the tags will be registered with the first micro app to load. And all the rest will use the same version, although they might rely on different one. And this is where the scoping comes into play. This API allows you to add unique suffix to the tags and overcome this challenge. For example, if you use the DCOM as your unique suffix, then instead of just UI5 button, you can use UI5 button dash DCOM. Let's see a demo for that. So we have two micro frontends here in one monolithic web app, one at the top and one below. The first one is using RC11, and the second one, the newer version, RC12. Both are rendering a UI5 table, and both really want to have this more button at the bottom of the table. And to do so, the first app used the property has more, and the button has been displayed. But in the newer version, this property has more has been changed to something else, to growing equals button. And the second application used that name for a property, but the button is not there. And the reason for that is that the UI5 table tag was already defined with the older version, where just this growing property doesn't exist. So let's use the scoping to fix that. This is the code. Okay, so this is the code of the second micro app. So now I'll use the scoping API. I'll use the DCOM as a unique suffix. And then instead of UI5 table, I'll command this part. I'll use UI5 table DCOM. And now, yeah, it's automatically refreshed. The more button is displayed and the second application is happy. So this way we support the micro frontend scenario. Okay, let's go back to the slides. Okay, Open UI5 integration. So on top of the Fiori 3 guidelines, we used to have and also we currently have UI5 controls for the Open UI5 programming model. With the UI5 Web Components, we open a new track. We enable the usage of UI5 assets also for Angular, React, Vue, and whatever technology will come in future. And what we are doing now as well is to benefit from the web components by reusing them into OpenUI5. And for that, we are building UI5 control wrappers that internally will render UI5 web components. Let me show you an example. It's here. Okay. So you should be familiar with the SAP M button, but now next to it, another button will appear, but it's from another library called SAP UI Web Components. And if we see the example, the button looks as usual, and also it can be used in XML views because it's UI5 control by nature. So what's then the difference? If I inspect this button, now you can see that UI5 button is really rendered, and this is the UI5 web component. And this is how we plan to integrate the UI5 web components into OpenUI5. And the idea is to develop any new controls as web components only, and then wrap them and reuse in OpenUI5. Okay, go back to slides. So the project is really getting traction and the feedback is quite positive so far. We are mentioned in a lot of popular websites like webcomponents.org. Developers are creating technical blogs with us and so on. And actually, if you define your development goals for the year within the success map, and take a moment to inspect the UI, right? You'll notice that everything is built with UI5 web components. UI5 tab container, in both places, there is a flexible column layout, which is a web component, the list with the list items, the button, and all these input components in the details page are made of UI5 web components. So really used in productive cases already. And also the consumption is increased. The past year, our weekly downloads have been about 2,000 and now they are more than 5,000, which is almost 3 times higher. In case you have any questions or you need to get in touch with us, I encourage you to join our Web Components channel. It's in the OpenUI5 Slack, or just find us in GitHub. The team is very active and responsive, and we'll help you with everything we can. All right, so I think that's it. And also left some time for Q&A.